Stop for a moment. Listen, not just to the noise around you, but to the silence within it. There is a secret hidden in plain sight, one that many ignore, but the wisest have always understood. Real power is not found in endless talking, in making yourself heard at every opportunity, or in trying to dominate through words. It is found in silence, in restraint, in the mastery of when to speak and when to hold back. Those who recognize this truth shape the world, while those who don't become mere pawns in the hands of others. Many assume that influence is about asserting oneself through speech, demanding attention, and making their voice the loudest in the room. But this belief is flawed. Niccolò Machiavelli, one of history's sharpest observers of power, knew that true strength does not lie in talking the most. It lies in controlling what is said and, more importantly, what is left unsaid. A leader who speaks too much exposes their fears, desires, and vulnerabilities. In contrast, one who listens carefully gains knowledge, detects weakness, and positions themselves strategically. The power of silence is not in withholding for the sake of mystery, but in controlling the flow of information. Those who master it dictate the terms of the game, while those who chatter aimlessly become predictable and easy to manipulate. Real influence is about precision, knowing when to reveal just enough to create an impact, and when to let others reveal themselves instead. The ancient masters of strategy all recognized this principle. In war, generals who concealed their plans and observed their enemies' weaknesses won battles without even engaging in combat. Sun Tzu, in The Art of War, emphasized that deception and patience determine the victor. He knew that silence could be as deadly as a blade. Consider a chess grandmaster. Does he impulsively make the first move without calculation? No. He watches, studies, waits. Silence is not passivity. It is an active form of control. It forces others to make the first mistake. The same principle applies to negotiations, leadership, and even everyday interactions. When you resist the urge to fill every silence with words, you allow space for others to show their cards. It is in their rush to speak that they expose their thoughts, their fears, and their insecurities. A person who speaks little but with precision commands respect. They are perceived as intelligent, decisive, and in control, even when they say nothing at all. Imagine two people sitting across from each other in a negotiation. One talks constantly, attempting to justify their position, seeking approval, explaining every detail. The other remains silent, observing, letting the speaker reveal too much. Who do you think holds the advantage? Silence creates tension, and most people rush to fill that tension with unnecessary information. A wise leader or negotiator knows how to wield this discomfort to their benefit. This technique is not just for corporate boardrooms or battlefields. It applies to personal relationships, social settings, and any situation where influence matters. The one who listens carefully, who controls the flow of dialogue, who allows the other person to speak first, always has the upper hand. The greatest kings, the sharpest minds, and the most successful strategists all had one thing in common. They understood the power of measured words. Silence is not emptiness. It is a presence that demands attention. It forces others to engage more deeply with what little you choose to say. There is a reason why the most respected individuals in history have been those who spoke little but made every word count. Think of a wise elder who sits in quiet contemplation, speaking only when necessary. Their words carry weight precisely because they are rare. Compare this to someone who talks excessively. Eventually, their words lose meaning. In a world overflowing with noise, silence is a statement in itself. It signals confidence, wisdom, and a sense of authority. When you learn to harness it, you will notice a shift, not just in how others perceive you, but in how you perceive yourself. You will start to recognize the moments when silence is the most powerful response, when observation is more valuable than reaction, and when a single, well-placed word can outweigh 1,000 careless ones. This principle has shaped history time and time again. Think of the great political minds who have influenced nations with their restraint. The most effective leaders never broadcast their intentions too soon. They let speculation do the work for them. They hold their plans close, allowing the world to guess, to wonder, to wait. And when they finally speak, their words carry the force of authority, not because they are loud, but because they are rare and deliberate. This is why silence is not weakness. It is the ultimate form of power. In relationships, in business, in strategy, and in life, the one who speaks the least often holds the most control. Those who cannot sit in silence, who must always speak to feel important, become transparent and predictable. But those who master the art of silence become enigmatic, respected, and, above all, powerful. Silence is not about withholding for the sake of withholding. It is about positioning yourself in a place of control. It forces the world to lean in, to listen more closely, to wonder what you might be thinking. The next time you are in a conversation, resist the impulse to fill every moment with words. Let others speak first. Let them reveal themselves. Observe, think, and only then, when it serves your purpose, respond. This is the difference between speaking just to be heard and speaking to be remembered. When you understand this, you will begin to see the world differently. You will realize that in the battle for influence, the one who speaks the least, yet says the most, always wins. Machiavelli once warned that power belongs to those who control information, those who speak too freely, revealing their thoughts without caution, unknowingly weaken their position. Yet, in today's world, where people equate speaking with importance, silence has become a lost art. Many speak excessively, not out of wisdom, but out of a deep-seated need for validation. They talk to fill uncomfortable gaps in conversations, to impress others, or to prove their worth. But in doing so, they give away the very leverage they seek to build. Why do people struggle with silence? It is a fundamental human reflex. When faced with uncertainty, insecurity, or the need for social approval, most individuals resort to words as a defense mechanism. They assume that speaking more gives them control, when in reality, it often strips them of it. Powerful individuals, however, understand that control does not come from being the loudest voice in the room, but from knowing when to remain silent. They practice measured speech, calculating their words for maximum impact. This restraint creates an air of mystery, an unspoken authority that compels others to listen when they do choose to speak. Machiavelli's insight that a prince must never take his eyes off war extends far beyond the battlefield. Every interaction is a subtle battle of influence, where information can be a weapon or a vulnerability. A person who speaks too openly is like a general who carelessly exposes his strategies before a war. He invites defeat before the fight even begins. Those who recognize this truth operate differently. They understand that speech, like strategy, must be used sparingly and with purpose. A well-timed silence can dismantle an opponent's confidence just as easily as a brilliant argument. True power lies not in words, but in their deliberate absence. Those who master silence hold the ability to observe without being observed, to listen while others reveal their intentions, and to remain unpredictable. Silence creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum, forcing others to fill the space with their own confessions, fears, and ambitions. The great figures of history, from emperors to philosophers, knew that silence was never empty, but a force that shaped their destiny. The less they spoke, the more weight their words carried. If you seek to harness silence as a tool of power, there are 3 essential principles you must understand. First, listen before you speak. The less you say, the more you learn. People reveal themselves in their words, but even more in their unguarded moments. By practicing silence, you begin to notice the subtleties that others overlook, the nervous twitch of a hand, the hesitation before a lie, the over-explaining that signals deception. Silence allows you to collect information without surrendering any of your own. Second, let others expose themselves. Most people fear silence because it makes them uncomfortable. In negotiations, conversations, and debates, a well-placed pause forces others to keep talking, often saying more than they intended. This is a tactic wielded by skilled leaders and master manipulators alike. When you resist the impulse to fill the silence, you shift the balance of power. You force the other party to reveal their insecurities, their desires, or their fears without ever lifting a finger. Third, speak only with purpose. Every word should carry significance, otherwise, it is a wasted breath. The most influential figures in history understood this principle. Think of leaders like Marcus Aurelius, who wrote entire philosophies in short, impactful statements. or modern visionaries like Steve Jobs, whose rare but carefully chosen words commanded rooms. They understood that the weight of speech comes not from quantity, but from intent. Those who can resist the urge to speak mindlessly gain an advantage that others do not even recognize. The power of silence is often underestimated, yet it is one of the most effective tools for influence. It is not merely the absence of words, but a strategy, one that forces others to reveal more than they wish, to second-guess themselves, and to give away their own power. Try this simple test. The next time you find yourself in a conversation, say nothing. Just observe. Watch how discomfort creeps in, how the other person starts to over-explain, to justify, to talk more than necessary. In those moments, they are unknowingly handing you their secrets, their weaknesses, their inner thoughts, all because they could not sit in silence. Those who wield silence as a weapon do not need to argue to win. They do not need to demand attention. It is freely given to them. They do not need to dominate through noise because their presence alone commands respect. This is the secret that few ever realize. Power is not about how much you say, but how much you choose not to say. Those who understand this rule shape the world. Those who do not remain forever at the mercy of those who do. The unshakable power of silence. Imagine walking into a room where a heated debate is unfolding. Voices rise, arguments clash, and emotions run high. Then, in the middle of it all, one person simply stops speaking. They lean back, observing, saying nothing. Instantly, the energy shifts. The others start to fidget, their words becoming rushed, desperate, even revealing. This is the unnoticed power of silence, an invisible force that unsettles, controls, and ultimately dictates the outcome of any interaction. Most people underestimate silence. They think power comes from speaking, from making their presence known, from asserting their dominance with words. But words, when used carelessly, become weapons that turn on their owner. They expose weaknesses, reveal insecurities, and scatter influence. The real masters of influence are those who know when to hold back, when to let silence stretch, forcing others to fill the void. It is in those moments that truth emerges, not from the speaker, but from the one who can't handle the quiet. How silence exposes truth. Consider an interrogation room. A suspect sits across from an investigator. The investigator asks a question, then falls silent. The suspect squirms. The silence gnaws at them, pressuring them to speak, to justify, to over-explain. Before they know it, they've confessed details they never intended to share. This tactic isn't just used in law enforcement. Lawyers, journalists, and even salespeople employ silence as a tool. Why? Because the need to fill an empty space is instinctive. People fear silence more than they fear words. In daily life, this principle is just as effective. Have you ever noticed how, in an argument, the person who talks the most is usually the weakest? They reveal everything. Anger, desperation, even their deepest fears, while the one who remains composed, who speaks little, always holds the upper hand. Silence doesn't just make others uncomfortable, it forces them to expose themselves. It's a mirror that makes people see their own flaws. Mastering silence in everyday life. 1. Social dynamics. Silence commands attention. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is trying to be the loudest voice. They compete for validation, for recognition, for the illusion of control. But in the midst of this noise, one person listens. They nod, they observe, and when they do speak, every head turns. This is the paradox of silence. The less you say, the more impact you have. People value what is rare. A person who speaks sparingly creates intrigue. Their words, when finally spoken, carry weight. In contrast, those who speak excessively dilute their own influence. Try this. The next time you're in a group conversation, resist the urge to fill every gap. Let others talk. Let silence build. You will notice a shift. Suddenly, people will start directing their attention toward you, waiting for your thoughts. In that moment, you hold the power. 2. Leadership. Speak less, move more. Great leaders understand that silence is a weapon sharper than any speech. A leader who constantly talks, who always feels the need to explain, loses authority. But a leader who listens, who chooses their words with precision, creates an aura of strength. Why? Because silence suggests certainty. The uncertain babble, the confident observe. Think of the greatest figures in history. They didn't gain influence by speaking endlessly. They mastered the art of pausing. They understood that silence before a decision creates tension, and tension commands respect. The leader who remains silent in a moment of chaos is the one everyone turns to for direction. If you want to command respect, stop rushing to speak. Take pauses. Let people lean in. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Influence isn't about how much you say. It's about when you choose to say it. 3. The silent negotiator, controlling the outcome. In negotiations, silence is not just a tactic, it's a trap. The one who talks the most always loses. Why? Because they reveal too much. They show eagerness, weakness, impatience. Meanwhile, the silent negotiator watches, waiting for the other party to fill the void. And they always do. A salesperson eager to close a deal will ramble on, offering discounts, extra perks, exposing their desperation. But the buyer who stays silent, who lets the salesperson speak, holds the power. Eventually, the seller starts negotiating against themselves, offering more than they intended, just to fill the uncomfortable quiet. Want to test this? The next time you're in a negotiation, whether it's for a raise, a purchase, or a decision, state your position, then stop talking. Let the silence stretch. Watch how the other person reacts. You'll be surprised at how much control you gain simply by not saying anything. Why silence is the ultimate tool of power. We live in an age where everyone competes to be heard. Social media thrives on opinions shouted into the void. Meetings are filled with people talking over each other, and personal conversations are often battles of who can speak next. But amidst all this noise, the silent ones stand out. The true masters of power do not rush to prove themselves with words. They let others reveal their weaknesses. They hold back, observing, calculating. Then, when the moment is right, they speak, and the world listens. Ask yourself, are you using your words to gain power, or are your words giving power away? Do you control your speech, or does your speech control you? Every word you speak is a move in the game of influence. Some words build empires, others tear them down. Silence is not about being mute. It is about knowing when to create anticipation, when to hold tension, and when to make words truly matter. Those who master this do not just win conversations, they shape the very course of events around them. So, I leave you with this question. Are you controlling the power of silence, or is your need to speak controlling you? Comment below, and let's see who truly understands the weight of words.